Before anything else, I want to send a warm hello to everyone watching from wherever you are online on television across the world. And to the students here in the room, thank you for the welcome. Truly. There's something powerful about standing in a place filled with bright, determined young women. It makes you pause and think, because you might be wondering why come all the way here to this school, to this community, out of all the places in the world. Why here? Well, the answer is simpler than you might expect. It's you. When I look out at young students chasing their dreams, it takes me back to where my own story began. I grew up in a working-class neighborhood on the south side of Chicago. It was the kind of place where people worked hard just to make ends meet, but where families were close and the values ran deep. My father worked as a pump operator at the city water plant, and my mother stayed home to take care of me and my older brother Craig. We lived in a small apartment, really small. My brother and I shared a bedroom that had been divided in half with a wooden partition. On each side was just enough space for a twin bed and a small desk. That was it. No extra room, no privacy, just two little spaces where we tried to study sleep and imagine our futures. But what we lacked in space, we made up for in love. Our extended family lived just blocks away. Grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, everyone was close. My great-aunt and uncle even lived one floor below us in the same building. Our home was rarely quiet. There was always someone coming through the door, someone talking in the next room, someone watching television while you were trying to concentrate. And if you've ever tried to do homework in a house full of people, you know how hard that can be. Sometimes the noise made it nearly impossible to focus. So I found my own solution. I started waking up at 4 in the morning when the house was finally still. Those quiet early hours became my time to study, to finish assignments, to think clearly before the day filled up with family responsibilities and activity. Because our family took care of one another. As my great-aunt and uncle grew older, my parents stepped in to help them every day. My father would assist my uncle with shaving and getting dressed each morning. My mother would sometimes rush downstairs in the middle of the night just to check that my aunt was okay. Watching that as a child, you understood something very clearly: family mattered. And when someone needed help, you showed up. So growing up meant learning to balance all of it. The noise of a crowded home, the expectations at school, and the responsibilities that came with being part of a family that relied on one another. And through all of that, my parents never let us forget one thing: we were expected to pursue our dreams while still being there for the people we loved. Through all the noise of that crowded apartment, through the responsibilities and the constant activity of family life, my parents held on to one belief with absolute certainty: education was the key. Not just a nice idea, not just something to aim for if things worked out, but the key that could unlock opportunities far beyond the neighborhood where we lived. They reminded me of that every single day. My parents would tell me that I could grow up to be anything I wanted: a doctor, a lawyer, a scientist. The possibilities in their eyes were wide open. But there was always one condition attached to those dreams. It wasn't magic, and it wasn't luck. It was work. Hard work in school. They made it clear that if I truly wanted those doors to open, I had to earn my way through them. And like many kids who grow up hearing that kind of faith from their parents, I didn't want to let them down. I carried their belief in me like a quiet responsibility. So I threw myself into my schoolwork. I read everything I could get my hands on: books, from school books, from the library, anything that might help me learn a little more about the world beyond the streets I knew. Every assignment mattered to me. Every test. Every chance to prove that their belief in me wasn't misplaced. I did my best on every single piece of work that came my way, not because anyone was forcing me to, but because I understood what was at stake. And deep down, I had a dream of my own. I dreamed about going to one of the best universities in America someday. To me, those places felt almost mythical worlds away from the apartment where my brother and I studied behind that wooden partition. But that didn't stop me from reaching for it. I studied, I pushed myself, and I tried to be the best student I could possibly be. Because when your parents believe that strongly in what education can do, it changes the way you see your future. It makes the impossible feel just a little bit closer. But even with all that determination, the path in front of me didn't always feel clear. In fact, there were moments when it felt like the world was quietly telling me to aim lower. As I started dreaming about attending one of the best universities in America, some people around me began to question whether that dream made sense. They would say things that sounded small at first, almost casual, but the message was clear. A girl like me, they suggested, might be reaching too high. It felt as if they were trying to place me inside a small box, one built from their own expectations about who I was and what someone from my background could realistically achieve. And when you hear that enough times, it starts to echo in your own mind. I remember wondering if maybe they were right. Maybe my dreams really were too big. After all, I was just a working-class kid from a neighborhood where very few people went to university. My parents had never attended college. Hardly anyone around me had, and I wasn't even sure how my family would afford the tuition if I did get in. I didn't have tutors helping me prepare for entrance exams. I didn't have special prep courses or advantages that wealthier students often had access to. And then, there was something else I couldn't ignore. I was a girl, and I was black. When I looked around at the leaders I could see on television, in business, in politics, in science, there were very few women who looked like me in those spaces. That kind of absence can quietly plant a question in your mind. Is there really a place for someone like me there? Maybe some of you have felt something similar. Maybe you've looked at the people leading companies, running laboratories, serving in government, and wondered whether someone with your background, your story, your faith, or your identity could ever stand in those same positions. Maybe you've heard about the advantages other students have and asked yourself how you're supposed to compete. And sometimes those thoughts can make you feel invisible, like you're being overlooked, lost in the noise of a big city or a busy life. Like maybe it's not even worth dreaming about something bigger. I know how heavy that feeling can be. I know how frustrating it can be. Because for a time, I felt it too. And that's why, when I look out at you, I don't just see students sitting in a classroom. I see young women who may already understand what it feels like to carry those same questions. Maybe some of you have looked at the people leading businesses, running laboratories, or serving in government, and quietly wondered whether there is a place for someone like you in those rooms. Maybe you've heard about the tutors, the prep courses, the advantages that wealthier students can afford, and you've asked yourself how you're supposed to compete with all of that. Maybe there are moments when it feels like no one is really paying attention to you, like you're just another face in a huge city, another voice in a crowded world. And maybe you read the news or hear people talking about your religion, and you wonder if others will ever see beyond a headscarf, beyond the assumptions and fears in their minds, and recognize who you truly are. Those feelings can be painful. They can be exhausting. They can even make you angry. I understand that. But here's what I want you to remember. With the education you are receiving here, you already have something incredibly powerful in your hands. You have the tools you need to rise above all of that noise. The doubts, the stereotypes, the misunderstandings. None of those things define your future. Your determination does. Your willingness to keep learning does. Your courage to keep going, even when others underestimate you, that is what matters. Because the truth is, the experiences you carry with you, the challenges you've faced, the perspective you've gained from your families and your communities, those things are not weaknesses. They are strengths. They shape the way you see the world. They deepen your understanding of the struggles people face. And that understanding gives you a voice that the world truly needs to hear. So no matter how loud the doubts around you may seem, never forget that the education you are building right now is something no one can take away from you. And with it, you have everything you need to keep moving forward. And this is why what you do with your education matters so much, not just for your own future, but for all of us. Because the perspective you carry with you is something the world truly needs. You know what it looks like when a family works hard just to make ends meet. You understand what it feels like to be overlooked or underestimated because of who you are, what you believe, or where you come from. Those experiences shape the way you see problems. They shape the compassion and determination you bring when you try to solve them. And that matters, because the challenges facing our world are not small ones. We need thoughtful, determined people working to address poverty. We need leaders who are willing to confront climate change. We need people committed to tackling disease and to standing up against violent extremism. These are complicated problems, and they require voices that understand struggle, resilience, and community. That's why the world needs more girls like you growing up to lead our parliaments, our boardrooms, our courtrooms, and our universities. We need your ideas, your insight, your courage. Because when people who have experienced hardship step forward to lead, they bring something powerful with them, a deeper understanding of what it means to build a world that works for everyone. And that kind of leadership has the power to change far more than just one life. It can change entire communities, entire countries, even the future of our world. But while many of you are sitting in classrooms today, working toward your goals, it's important to remember that millions of girls around the world are not given that same chance. Right now, there are more than 62 million girls across the globe who are not in school. Think about that for a moment. 62 million young lives filled with potential curiosity and dreams, and yet they are denied the simple opportunity to learn. Some of these girls live in families that believe their daughters are not worthy of an education. Others come from homes that simply cannot afford the cost of sending them to school. There are girls who live so far from the nearest classroom that getting there safely is almost impossible. And there are girls who face something even more frightening. Girls who risk violence just for wanting to learn. Girls like Malala Yousafzai, who was attacked simply because she believed she had the right to sit in a classroom and study. And when we hear stories like that, it's easy to feel the heartbreak for those girls themselves. But the truth is, this loss reaches far beyond them. Because when a girl is denied an education, the world loses something too. Somewhere among those 62 million girls could be someone who might one day discover a cure for cancer. Another might build a company that transforms an entire industry. Another could grow up to become a president or prime minister who inspires her country and changes the course of history. But if she never steps inside a classroom, she may never discover what she is capable of becoming. And that means we all miss out on the brilliance, the leadership, and the possibilities that she could have brought into the world. That reality is one of the reasons this issue has drawn so much attention from leaders and communities around the world. Because when we talk about educating girls, we're not just talking about classrooms, we're talking about unlocking human potential on a global scale. And that's why efforts are being made to change this story. Earlier this year, the United States launched an initiative called letgirlslearn, designed to help girls in developing countries not only go to school, but stay in school. The goal is simple, but powerful: remove the barriers that keep girls from accessing the education they deserve. Today, new partnerships between the United States and the United Kingdom are strengthening that effort. Together, the two countries are committing nearly $200 million to support education for girls, particularly adolescents, living in places affected by conflict and crisis regions like the Democratic Republic of Congo, where instability makes schooling especially difficult. This collaboration brings together universities, development agencies, and organizations working directly in communities. Researchers will study ways to improve education for girls, while volunteers and international campaigns will partner with local leaders to support and encourage adolescent girls to stay in school. It's a shared effort built on a shared belief that when girls are given the chance to learn, entire communities become stronger. And when nations work together to protect that opportunity, the impact can reach across the world. Coming back to London brings back a memory that has stayed with me for years. On my very first international trip as First Lady, this city was my first stop. During that visit, I spent time with students at a school here, girls not so different from the ones sitting in front of me today. And I remember standing there looking out across that room, thinking about how much promise each of those young women carried inside them. Their passion, their intelligence, their hope for the future. It was all right there waiting to unfold. In many ways, moments like that shaped so much of the work that followed. Because when you stand in a room filled with girls who are learning, questioning, and dreaming, you can't help but imagine what their futures might hold. And today, standing here again, that same feeling returns. When I look out across this room, I don't just see students. I see future surgeons and scientists. I see artists and innovators. I see barristers, entrepreneurs, and women who will one day win elections and lead communities. I see leaders whose influence will reach far beyond this school, far beyond this neighborhood, leaders who will inspire people across this country and around the world. Because I know what lives inside girls like you. I know how deeply you care about your families and your communities. And I know just how powerful that determination can become when it's matched with opportunity. When I look at you, I see possibility. I see young women who will lift themselves, their families, and their communities to places once thought unreachable. That's the power of education. It opens doors you didn't even know existed. And once those doors open, the future becomes something you can shape with your own hands. So keep learning, keep believing, and keep pushing forward. And if stories like this move you, stay with us. There are many more conversations worth sharing.